What's up, everyone? Hope you're all doing great. Remember, to laugh a little, it's good for the soul. Welcome back to Darkest Dark Web Horror Stories. I love reading your comments, so feel free to say hi, share suggestions, or just lurk. Don't forget to show your support by liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already. And with that said, enjoy the stories. In the grimy, fluorescent-lit basement of the Boston Public Library, I found something that wasn't meant to be found. It was hidden in the dialogues of Plato, buried within a cryptic cipher. I'm a cryptographer, so I can spot patterns others can't. This one was different. It was alive, like it was whispering to me, begging to be decoded. I spent weeks hunched over my desk, fueled by cold coffee and stale pizza. I translated, decoded, and decrypted. The whisper became a shout, then a scream. It was a message, a digital map leading to a dark web forum. Atlantis Rising, it was called. My gut twisted. I'd stumbled into something big, something dangerous. The forum was a mess of code strings, encrypted texts, and paranoid rants. But there was a pattern here too. These people, whoever they were trying to decode something. The same something I'd found. A lost digital archive hidden within ancient texts. They believed it held the secrets of Atlantis. Yeah, the one that sank beneath the waves. Crazy, right? But I couldn't shake off the feeling that they were onto something. I dove in, decoding and posting under the alias Crypto King. I got pulled into the obsession, the frenzy. Then I found the private messages. Threats, warnings. Someone or something didn't want us digging, but I couldn't stop. I was too deep. One night, after a particularly heated exchange, my screen flickered. A message popped up. "We need to talk," it said. "Meet us. Tomorrow, high noon, the Crimson Lounge." Then the screen went black. My heart pounded in my chest. The Crimson Lounge was a shithole in downtown Boston. I knew it well. Too well. I had a choice to make. Walk away, pretend I never saw the message. Or dive deeper. Find out who was behind this. I chose the latter. Fuck it, right? I never claimed to be smart. The Crimson Lounge was a dive bar. The kind of place where dreams go to die. It was dark, dingy, and reeked of desperation. I walked in, squinting through the haze of cigarette smoke. The patrons were a motley crew of drunks, junkies, and thieves. I fit right in. I scanned the room looking for, I don't know what. A man in a trench coat and fedora, a shadowy figure lurking in the corner. What I got was a petite woman with a pixie cut, sitting at the bar, nursing a whiskey. She looked up, caught my eye, and nodded. I slid onto the stool next to her. "Crypto King, I presume?" she asked, a smirk playing on her lips. I nodded, signaling the bartender for a drink. "I'm Eve," she said. "I sent the message." Eve was a historian, specializing in ancient civilizations. She'd found the same cipher I had, but in a different text. She'd been on the forum longer, knew more about the players. She warned me about a group called the Puppeteers. They were the ones pulling strings, trying to control the flow of information. "They're dangerous," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They'll stop at nothing to get the Atlantean tech." I scoffed. "Atlantean tech? You really believe that shit?" She fixed me with a hard stare. "I've seen things, Crypto King. Things that defy explanation. The Atlanteans were advanced. Too advanced. They had AI, genetic engineering. They could manipulate life itself." I swallowed hard. This was crazy talk. But there was something in her eyes, a conviction that sent a shiver down my spine. I believed her. God help me, I believed her. Suddenly her eyes widened. She looked past me towards the door. "Shit," she muttered. "We've got company." I turned just as two men in suits walked in. They scanned the room, their eyes landing on us. Eve grabbed my arm. "We need to go. Now." But it was too late. The men were already moving towards us. I braced myself ready for a fight. Then everything went black. I woke up to the taste of blood and the smell of damp concrete. My head was pounding, and my body ached like I'd been put through a meat grinder. I was in a dimly lit room, tied to a chair. Fuck. I looked around, trying to get my bearings. The room was empty, except for a table with a laptop and a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. I struggled against the ropes, but they were tight. Too tight. The door creaked open, and one of the suits walked in. He was tall, with a face like a hatchet and eyes that were cold and dead. He pulled up a chair and sat down, facing me. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice as cold as his eyes. I spat blood onto the floor. "Fuck you!" He sighed, then nodded to someone behind me. Suddenly, pain exploded in my kidneys. I grunted, biting back a scream. The suit leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let's try this again. Who are you?" I glared at him, but I was sweating. I was in way over my head. "Crypto King," I muttered. He raised an eyebrow. "Crypto King? That's your name?" I shrugged. "It's what they call me on the forum." He nodded, then opened the laptop. He turned it around, showing me the screen. It was the Atlantis Rising forum. My posts were highlighted. "You're good," he said. "Very good. But you're in the way." "In the way of what?" I asked, stalling for time. He smiled, but it was more like a baring of teeth. "The future," he said. "The puppeteers have big plans, Crypto King, and we can't have you interfering." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "The puppeteers? You're fucking insane. Atlantis is a myth. There's no advanced tech. It's all just a story." He shook his head. "You're wrong. And soon, we'll have the power to reshape the world. But first, we need to deal with you." He stood up, signaling to the man behind me. I braced myself, ready for the pain, but suddenly the lights went out. There was a scuffle, a grunt, then silence. I sat there, heart pounding, eyes straining against the darkness. Then a familiar voice. "Crypto King, you alive?" It was Eve. Eve cut the ropes, and I stumbled to my feet, rubbing my wrists. I could see her silhouette in the dim light filtering through the door. She was holding a gun, and there were two bodies on the floor. I nudged one with my foot. "Out cold. How did you find me?" I asked, my voice hoarse. She handed me a bottle of water. "I followed them. I figured they'd take you to their base." I was right. I took a swig of water, swishing it around my mouth before spitting it out. "Thanks," I muttered. She nodded. "We need to move. There'll be more of them." We slipped out of the room and into a narrow corridor. It was dark, but Eve moved with confidence. She'd been here before. We made our way to a stairwell, then up to a metal door. Eve pushed it open, and we stepped out into the cold night air. We were on the docks. The harbor stretched out before us, the city lights reflecting on the water. I looked back at the building we'd just left. It was a warehouse, nondescript and forgotten. The perfect place for a secret base. Eve led me to a car parked nearby. We got in, and she started the engine. As we pulled away, I looked at her. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. She kept her eyes on the road. "Because someone has to stop them. The puppeteers, they're dangerous. They want to use the Atlantean tech to control people, to create a new world order." I shook my head. "This is insane. Atlantis is a myth. There's no advanced tech." She glanced at me, her eyes hard. "You still don't believe? After what you've seen?" I looked away, watching the city lights blur into a stream of color. I didn't know what to believe, but I knew one thing. I was in too deep to walk away now. We drove in silence for a while. Then Eve spoke again. "We need to find the archive before they do, and we need to destroy it." I looked at her, surprised. "Destroy it? But it's a piece of history. It could change everything." She nodded. "Exactly, and in the wrong hands, it could change everything for the worse." She had a point. I leaned back in my seat, my mind racing. This was bigger than me. bigger than both of us. But we were the only ones who could stop it. All right, I said, let's find this archive and let's destroy it. Eve smiled, a grim, determined smile. Good, she said, because we're going to need all the help we can get. Eve's safe house was a small apartment in a rundown part of the city. It was sparse with bare walls and minimal furniture. But it was safe. For now, we sat at the kitchen table, laptops open, coffee brewing. We were going through the forum posts, looking for clues, anything that could lead us to the archive. It was slow, painstaking work, but we were making progress. Eve pointed to a post, a string of numbers and letters. This is a coordinate, she said. It's in Greece, the island of Santorini. I looked at the coordinate, then at the map. Santorini was a small island in the Aegean Sea. It was known for its beauty, its history, and its connection to Atlantis. Some believed that the mythical city was based on a real place, a Minoan settlement that was destroyed by a volcanic eruption. Santorini was that place. We need to go there, Eve said, her eyes meeting mine. I nodded. I know. But how? We're both on the puppeteer's radar. They'll be watching the airports, the ports. Eve smiled. Leave that to me. I have a friend. He owes me a favor. I raised an eyebrow. A friend. Care to elaborate? She shook her head. No. Now let's pack. We leave tonight. We packed light. Just a change of clothes and our laptops. Eve made a call, speaking in hushed tones. Then we were off, driving through the night, leaving the city behind. We met Eve's friend at a small marina. He was a grizzled old man with a weather-beaten face and a gruff voice. He didn't ask questions, just led us to a small boat. We climbed aboard, and he cast off, steering us out into the open sea. The journey was long, but uneventful. We spent the time going over our plan, what little there was of it. We'd go to Santorini, find the location marked by the coordinate, and hope it led us to the archive. It was a long shot, but it was all we had. As we approached the island, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. It was beautiful, a crescent of black sand beaches and whitewashed buildings, all under the watchful eye of the volcano that had birthed it. And somewhere, hidden beneath its surface, was a secret that could change the world. We docked at a small harbor, thanking Eve's friend. He nodded, then cast off, disappearing into the night. We were on our own now. We made our way to the coordinate, a secluded spot on the northern tip of the island. It was a ruin, an ancient settlement half buried in the sand. We started to dig. The sun was high by the time we found it, a stone staircase leading down into darkness. We looked at each other, then at the yawning mouth of the staircase. This was it, the point of no return. We descended, our flashlights cutting through the gloom. The air was damp and cold, the silence oppressive. The stairs seemed to go on forever, spiraling down into the heart of the island. Then, suddenly, they ended. We were in a chamber, vast and echoing. The walls were carved with symbols, ancient and alien. In the center was a pedestal, and on it, a crystal. It was small, no bigger than my fist, but it pulsed with a strange light. It seemed to, a low vibration that I felt in my bones. Eve approached it, her eyes wide. This is it, she whispered. The archive. I looked around, my skin crawling. We need to get out of here, I said. This place, it feels wrong. Eve nodded, reaching for the crystal. But as her fingers brushed against it, the chamber shook. The hum became a roar, and the symbols on the walls began to glow. A hologram flickered to life above the pedestal, a figure made of light. It was a man, tall and regal, dressed in robes. He spoke, his voice echoing in the chamber. Greetings, traveler. You have found the archive of Atlantis. Here lies the sum of our knowledge, our achievements, our our sins. Eve and I exchanged a look. This was it. Proof that Atlantis was real. That their technology was advanced beyond anything we could imagine. The hologram continued. But be warned. Our knowledge is not meant for the uninitiated. It is a burden. A responsibility. Use it wisely, for it holds the power to create and to destroy. Suddenly, the chamber shook again, more violently this time. The hologram flickered, then disappeared. The symbols on the walls began to pulse, the light strobing in a disorienting pattern. I looked at Eve, her face pale in the eerie light. "We need to go," I said, my voice barely audible over the roar. "Now," she nodded, grabbing the crystal. As she did, the chamber shook again, and the staircase began to crumble. We ran, stumbling up the stairs as the walls collapsed around us. We made it to the surface just as the chamber caved in, the entrance disappearing in a cloud of dust. We stood there panting, the crystal clutched in Eve's hand. We'd done it, we'd found the archive, but at what cost? We made it back to the safe house, exhausted and covered in dust. But we had the crystal. We had the archive. Now we just needed to figure out how to access it. We set up our laptops, the crystal pulsing between us. We started to decode, to decrypt, to translate. It was slow work, painstaking and frustrating, but we were making progress. The archive was a treasure trove, a record of a civilization far more advanced than our own. There were schematics for machines that could harness the power of the sun, designs for buildings that could withstand the force of a hurricane. There were treatises on philosophy, on politics, on the nature of the universe itself. But there was something else, something darker. A record of experiments, of genetic manipulation, of AI gone wrong. The Atlanteans had been playing God, and it had cost them dearly. As we delved deeper, we realized that the puppeteers were right. This technology could change the world, but it could also destroy it. We needed to make sure it never fell into the wrong hands. We worked tirelessly, barely sleeping, barely eating. We were close, so close to understanding, to unlocking the final piece of the puzzle. And then suddenly, it all made sense. The archive was a key, a code that could unlock the very fabric of reality. It could rewrite the rules of the universe, bend them to the will of the user. It was powerful, dangerous, and it was ours. But our triumph was short-lived. There was a knock at the door, a sharp, insistent rap. We looked at each other, our faces pale. We knew who it was. The puppeteers had found us. They broke down the door, storming in with guns drawn. We were outnumbered, outgunned, but we had the archive. And we had each other. Eve looked at me, her eyes hard. "We can't let them have it," she said. I nodded, understanding her meaning. I grabbed the crystal, holding it up. "You want it?" I shouted at the men. "Catch!" I threw the crystal, hard. It hit the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces. The men screamed, lunging for the shards. But it was too late. The archive was destroyed. Eve and I took advantage of the chaos, slipping out the back door. We ran, hand in hand, leaving the safe house, leaving the puppeteers, leaving everything behind. We made it to the street, breathless and shaking. We looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between us. We'd done it. We'd stopped them. But our fight was far from over. The puppeteers were still out there, still searching for the secrets of Atlantis. And we were the only ones who could stop them. But that's a story for another time. For now, we disappeared into the crowd. Two shadows in the night. Our names forgotten, our faces unknown. But our legacy lived on, a testament to the power of knowledge and the danger it holds. They say some knowledge is best left buried, But, as a historian, it's hard to resist the allure of a secret. And this was no ordinary secret. I was in the archives of the Vatican, elbows deep in a manuscript I'd been studying for months. Another dry text on the Knights Templar. That's when I found it. A scribbled Latin phrase barely visible in the margins. Filius Lucis, the digital key. My pulse quickened. That phrase didn't belong. Filius Lucis translates roughly to child of light, an esoteric term only used in obscure Templar rituals. And the digital key, well, that had me stumped. This was medieval Latin, centuries before anything digital even existed. I started pulling every string I could. I traced that term through layers of religious texts, occult manuscripts, anything that hinted at Templar secrets. After sleepless nights and pages of notes, I pieced together a story the world forgot, or was made to forget. The Templars had access to knowledge that was ahead of its time. I mean, way ahead. Rumors of their alchemy, astrology, and engineering skills were legendary. But here's the kicker. The texts hinted that they'd hidden this knowledge in a digital archive. As insane as it sounds, there was something encoded digitally or otherwise in their records. A goddamn treasure trove hidden in some cyber corner of our world. In every treasure hunt, though, there's a catch. I'd barely finished my research when strange things started happening. I'd hear clicks on the other end of my phone. My emails would glitch, vanish. Messages left unsent. I thought it was paranoia creeping in, my brain's way of keeping me in check. But then the real threat started. An anonymous email hit my inbox one evening. No subject, no greeting, just a line. Stay out of the dark. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Stay out of the dark. Did someone know about my research? Could someone be watching? I brushed it off. I mean, it's the Vatican archives. Surveillance isn't exactly unexpected, right? But I couldn't let go. I needed to know what Filius Lucis really was. As night fell, I connected to the dark web, a place as twisted as it sounds. I'd only dipped into it a few times before, looking up old manuscripts or banned books. But this time, I was on a hunt, and that's when I found it. There was a forum called Lux Tenebris, the Light in the Darkness. Buried deep in a labyrinth of links and hidden servers, it looked like any conspiracy forum, full of myths and half-baked theories about the Templars. But the deeper I went, the stranger it got. Some users whispered about a child of light and the existence of a powerful archive. Others claimed the Templars had found a way to transcend death, a digital resurrection. Then a direct message popped up on my screen. If you're looking for the child of light, you'll need to go deeper. Be prepared to sacrifice. Goosebumps prickled my skin. I hadn't told anyone what I was looking for, not even close friends. My hand hovered over the mouse, considering the risks. But curiosity had me. I clicked. A new page opened, displaying a list of Latin words, scrambled and glitched like static. A distorted voice came through my speakers, hissing in a language I barely recognized, an ancient dialect mixed with garbled Latin phrases. Then the screen went black, and a final message flickered in white. The light will find you. After that night, there was no turning back. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My mind replayed that flickering message on a loop. I spent the next few days doing nothing but scouring the dark web. Each click brought me deeper into uncharted territory, a shadowed underbelly of society where morality was a myth, and ethics went to die. Here, people traded not just drugs or weapons, but knowledge, ancient, cursed, hidden knowledge. And that's where I found him. An anonymous user with the handle Lux Dominus. He or she, or whatever it was known on the forums as a light keeper. Every conspiracy theorist seemed to fear them, treating Lux Dominus like a digital demigod. And now they were sending me messages, cryptic Latin phrases about the light and the keys of Solomon. Then one night an email came through. This one didn't bother with riddles. We know what you're looking for, but beware. If you find the archive, there's no going back. It was signed simply, Lux Dominus. It didn't take long for things to escalate. My apartment felt colder, darker. Every time I tried to pull myself back, remind myself that this was just some digital scavenger hunt, I'd get another email or message, always at odd hours, always from Lux Dominus. They were testing me, pushing me further, daring me to keep going. And damn it, I couldn't help myself. The next message gave me coordinates. I almost laughed at the absurdity. I wasn't about to hop on a plane to some remote location in the middle of who knew where. But curiosity got the better of me. I typed the coordinates into a map, and my heart skipped a beat. It pointed to an abandoned Templar castle in Portugal. I stared at the screen, breathing heavily. I could practically feel the weight of history pressing down on me. This wasn't just a theory or a game anymore. This was real, and that terrified me more than I wanted to admit. But still, I booked the flight. The castle was even more imposing than I'd imagined. Crumbling walls, towering spires, and an eerie silence hung over it all. A chill settled over me as I stepped through the gates, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and old secrets. Inside, I was led by nothing more than the whispers in my own mind. I found the old Templar symbol 2 knights on a single horse carved into the stone. Beneath it, I saw what looked like an ancient keypad, a mix of Latin and symbols I barely recognized. I hesitated, feeling that icy trickle of dread down my spine. But there was no turning back now. I punched in the words that had haunted me since I first read them. Filius Lucis. Nothing happened at first. Then, a small door opened, revealing a staircase winding down into pitch-black darkness. As I descended, each step felt heavier, like I was carrying the weight of centuries. The room at the bottom was no bigger than a closet, empty except for a single laptop sitting on a stone pedestal, dimly lit by a strange bluish glow. The screen flickered to life as I approached. "Welcome, child of light," I swallowed, feeling my heartbeat throb in my ears. The laptop's screen showed a simple prompt. "Enter your question." Hands trembling, I typed, "What is the digital archive?" The response was instantaneous. The Templar's knowledge, saved from destruction, hidden in digital code. A map to enlightenment and power. Before I could type again, the screen displayed something else. "Be warned, there are those who would kill to protect this secret. There is no sanctuary for the curious." And with that, the laptop shut down, plunging me back into darkness. Getting out of Portugal was harder than I'd expected. Every movement, every glance over my shoulder, felt like an eternity. I knew I was being followed. Lux Dominus had connections, no doubt about it. But it wasn't until I returned home that I realized how deep I'd gone. There was a package waiting for me on my doorstep. No return address, no note, just a plain brown box. I hesitated before opening it, half expecting some kind of explosive. Inside, I found a small black USB drive and a slip of paper with a single phrase scrawled in messy handwriting. "Use this carefully, they're watching." I didn't know who they were, but I could guess. This wasn't just a group of bored hackers or conspiracy theorists. This was something organized, something ruthless. My hands shook as I slid the drive into my laptop, opening up a folder labeled Lux Archive. What I found made my skin crawl. There were files, hundreds of them. Documents, blueprints, maps, some in ancient languages, others encrypted in ways I didn't recognize. But I caught glimpses of words: alchemy, resurrection, bloodline. These were the Templar's secrets, hidden for centuries, stashed away in digital form. My mind spun with the implications. The Templars had been hiding knowledge, not just in vaults and catacombs, but in an entirely different realm. This wasn't just history, this was power. But why had they gone to such lengths to hide it? And who was protecting it now? Just as I was absorbing the sheer scale of what I'd uncovered, a loud knock echoed through my apartment. Heart racing, I closed the laptop, shoved it under my couch, and made my way to the door. Outside stood two men in dark suits, their expressions cold and unyielding. "Mr. Reed," one of them said in a voice as flat as a stone, "we're with the Institute for Historical Preservation. We have reason to believe you're in possession of stolen materials. Mind if we come in?" I forced myself to stay calm, but my mind raced. I didn't know who they were, but I could guess. The so-called Institute was just a front another layer in the shadowy world of those protecting the Templars' secrets. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, feigning confusion. The other man smiled, a cold, humorless twist of his lips. "We think you do, and we suggest you hand it over, now." I don't remember exactly how I managed to get them to leave. I spun a lie, a convincing one, but I knew it wouldn't last. As soon as they left, I threw whatever I could into a bag, grabbed my laptop, and ran. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to keep moving. Every shadow felt like it held a pair of eyes, every stranger's glance like an accusation. I found a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind where no one asks questions, and checked in under a fake name. Once I was safely inside, I bolted the door and wedged a chair under the handle for good measure. The USB drive was still in my pocket, like a hot coal I couldn't let go of. I plugged it into my laptop, heart pounding, and opened the files again. If they wanted it this badly, there had to be something more, something even the Templars couldn't destroy. The folders were named with phrases that felt ancient and ominous. Corpus Luxus, the Veil of Saints, Codex Vitae. Most of them were encrypted, but a few files were accessible. I clicked one, titled The King's Bloodline, and began reading. The document spoke of rituals, alchemical practices, and a lineage that could unlock the doors to divine knowledge. The Templars had believed in a hidden bloodline, descendants of an ancient order who were the keepers of secret wisdom, and apparently they'd left clues to finding this bloodline, encoded in their manuscripts, scattered in places only their descendants could access. Then I found something else: blueprints. They showed intricate designs for machines, devices that looked nothing like the tech we know today. The Templars had been experimenting with something, some early form of technology mixed with alchemy, creating a strange fusion of science and mysticism. Just as I was beginning to connect the dots, my laptop screen flickered. Lines of code scrolled across it, and I realized I was being hacked. Frantically, I tried to cut the connection, but it was too late. The screen went black. Then a message appeared. "You've gone too far. Surrender the files." Sweat dripped down my face. They had found me, even in this dump of a motel. I yanked the USB drive from my laptop and shut it off, breathing hard. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a new message. It was from Lux Dominus. "You're not safe. Go to Rome. The answers are in the catacombs." My pulse quickened. Rome. The message was as cryptic as it was insane, but what choice did I have? These people were everywhere, and whoever Lux Dominus was, they'd been guiding me through this labyrinth from the start. I grabbed my things and left, keeping my head low, paranoia gnawing at me with each step. The flight to Rome was a blur. By the time I arrived, I was running on fumes and nerves. I checked into another nameless hotel and spent the night tossing and turning, too afraid to sleep. At dawn, I made my way to the entrance of the catacombs, where the public tours didn't go. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, the bones of thousands long dead surrounding me in eerie silence. The message from Lux Dominus had been vague, but I trusted it meant one thing. The hidden archive was somewhere down here, lost beneath the streets of Rome. Hours passed as I wandered through the narrow corridors, flashlight shaking in my hand. I thought I was alone until I heard footsteps echoing behind me. I turned, heart pounding, but saw no one. Then the whispers started. At first they were faint, just a soft murmuring at the edges of my hearing. But as I ventured deeper, they grew louder, almost insistent. They sounded like voices reciting something in Latin, over and over, a chilling litany that scratched at the edges of my sanity. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I stumbled upon an ancient door. The Templar cross was etched into the stone, worn but unmistakable. With a deep breath, I pushed it open, half expecting an ambush. Instead, I found a small room, dimly lit by candles that looked as if they'd been burning for centuries. And in the center of the room, resting on a stone altar, was an old leather-bound book. Beside another laptop, one even older than the first. I moved forward, hands trembling, and flipped open the book. Inside, I found pages and pages of Templar symbols, strange diagrams and writing that seemed to shift as I read it. The Templars had documented something here, something they feared, something they wanted hidden. And whoever Lux Dominus was, they wanted me to find it. On a whim, I opened the laptop. It whirred to life and a message appeared on the screen. "Welcome, child of light, you are not alone." Then, almost as if responding to my unspoken fear, a second message appeared. "Trust no one, they are close." I barely had time to register the warning before I heard a rustle at the door. The door creaked open, and I spun around to see a figure standing in the shadows. They stepped forward, revealing a familiar face, one I'd only seen in grainy profile pictures on the dark web. "Lux Dominus. Surprised?" he asked, his voice calm but menacing. "You've done well to make it this far." I backed away, clutching the book to my chest. "What do you want with me?" He smirked. "It's not about what I want. It's about what you found. That archive holds more power than you could possibly imagine. Power that only a few should wield." "Why?" I demanded, my voice barely a whisper. "Why hide it?" "Because knowledge is a weapon," he said, stepping closer. "And some things are too dangerous for the world to know." I realized then that I wasn't dealing with some lone hacker or conspiracy theorist. Lux Dominus was part of a network, a global syndicate, hell-bent on controlling this knowledge, and they had let me find it only so they could take it for themselves. With a swift movement, he lunged forward. I dodged, heart racing, and stumbled back against the altar. My fingers found the USB drive in my pocket, and I had an idea. A desperate, reckless idea. I jammed the USB into the ancient laptop and watched as the files began to upload. Lux Dominus snarled, lunging toward me, but I held him off long enough to see a final message flash on the screen. "The light shall be free." In one last act of defiance, I hit send, transmitting the files to every dark web forum, every corner of the internet I could think of. The archive wasn't mine, but now it wouldn't be his either. Lux Dominus screamed in rage, his control shattered. I stumbled back as he lunged, but a flash of light and the sounds of distant sirens stopped him cold. It seemed I wasn't the only one tracking him. Authorities had been following the archive's trail, just waiting for the right moment. They stormed in, guns drawn, hauling Lux Dominus away as I clutched the book, blood pounding in my ears. The Templar secrets were no longer hidden. The ancient knowledge scattered to the digital winds. I didn't know what kind of havoc it might bring, if it would destroy us or save us. But for the first time in centuries, the child of light's knowledge was no longer bound, and in that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice, even if the world wasn't ready for it. In the grimy, neon-lit underbelly of Berlin, I sat in a cramped apartment, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the hum of my laptop. I'm Jack, a journalist known for diving into the dark web's murkiest waters. Tonight, I was trawling the depths of the hidden wiki, a digital treasure map to the internet's most twisted corners. Suddenly, a link caught my eye, the lost city of the damned. Intrigued, I clicked it. A creepy forum thread unfurled, filled with whispers of a cursed city hidden deep in the Amazon, accessible only through a map found on the dark web. The city, they said, was a digital anomaly, a place where reality glitched. I felt a thrill, the kind that comes from standing at the edge of a cliff, peering into the abyss. I had to find the city. I dug deeper, found a map buried in an onion site. It was a mess of code and coordinates, but I recognized something in the chaos. A pattern, a path. I picked up my phone, dialed my old friends Mia, the tech genius, Alex, the ex-military survivalist, and Sarah, the linguist with a knack for ancient languages. We'd explored dangerous places before, but this was different. 3 days later, we were in Manaus, Brazil, sweating in a dingy hotel room. The map led us to the heart of the Amazon, a place untouched by modern hands. We hired a guide, a weathered local named Paulo, who looked at our map and crossed himself. Cidade dos Condenados, he muttered. City of the damned. The journey was hell. Humidity choked us. Insects feasted on us, and the river tried to drown us. But after days of slogging through the green inferno, we found it. A city swallowed by the jungle, its ancient stones strangled by vines. And at the city's entrance, a sight that turned my blood to ice. A modern laptop, half buried in the dirt, its screen flickering with static. We stepped into the city, the air thick with dread. The place was wrong, like a picture with the colors slightly off. The stones were too smooth, the angles too perfect, and the noise a low hum, almost like the buzz of electronics. It was unnatural, all of it. Alex took point, his assault rifle sweeping the shadows. Mia stayed close to me, her eyes scanning the city like a human radar. Sarah lingered by the strange symbols etched into the walls, her fingers tracing the patterns. Paolo refused to enter, his eyes wide with fear. He stayed by the river, promising to wait for us. The first sign of trouble came when we reached the city's center. A massive stone slab stood there, covered in symbols. As Sarah approached, the hum intensified. Suddenly the ground shifted. The city's layout changed, walls moving like pixels on a screen. We were trapped. Panic surged. But Mia was calm. She pulled out her tablet, fingers dancing over the screen. It's a puzzle, she said. The city's layout is like a digital maze. We need to solve it to proceed. We split up, each taking a section of the city. I found myself in a narrow alley, the walls closing in on me. The hum was deafening here, and I could swear I saw pixels flickering in the air. Then a figure stepped out of the shadows. A man, but not quite. His body glitched, his face a mess of static. He lunged. I ducked, swinging my machete. It passed through him like he was made of smoke. He flickered, then solidified, his hands wrapping around my throat. I couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in my vision. Then, a gunshot echoed, and the figure dissolved into pixels. Alex stood behind me, his rifle smoking. We need to stick together, he growled. Back at the slab, we shared our findings. Mia had solved the puzzle, a complex algorithm that seemed to govern the city's layout. As she entered the final sequence, the city groaned. The walls shifted again, revealing a dark entrance. A shiver ran down my spine. We were in the belly of the beast now. The tunnel led us deep into the earth, the air growing colder, the hum louder. Our flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing walls lined with more symbols. Sarah was in her element, her eyes shining with excitement. It's a language, she said. A digital language, like binary code. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber. A lake of black liquid stretched out before us, its surface shimmering like oil. In the center stood a pedestal, a glowing orb resting on top. The orb pulsed with light, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Alex waded into the lake, the liquid coming up to his waist. He reached for the orb, his hand hovering over it. Suddenly the chamber trembled. The liquid churned, and figures rose from the depths. humanoid but twisted, their bodies made of writhing code. They lunged at Alex. He fought back, his rifle barking in the enclosed space. But the figures kept coming, their numbers overwhelming. Mia and I rushed in, hacking at them with our machetes. Sarah stayed on the shore, shouting instructions, her voice barely audible over the chaos. We reached Alex, his body battered and bloody. Together we fought our way back to the shore, the figures dissolving into pixels as we struck them down. Once on solid ground, Mia pulled out her tablet, her fingers flying over the screen. She was coding something, her brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the chamber. The figures froze, their bodies convulsing. Then, they collapsed, their forms dissolving into the black liquid. Mia looked up, her face pale. "I hacked them," she said. "They're digital entities, controlled by the city's mainframe." We turned to the orb, its glow now steady. Sarah approached it, her hand reaching out. As her fingers touched the surface, the chamber trembled again. A voice echoed in our minds, cold and mechanical. "Intruders," it said. "You shall face the wrath of the Guardians." The walls shifted, revealing 3 tunnels. Each one led into darkness, the air humming with malice. We had to split up. There was no other way. With a heavy heart, we chose our paths, stepping into the unknown. I took the left tunnel, the walls closing in on me like a vice. The hum was deafening here, the air thick with static. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, coalescing into figures. The Guardians. They were digital nightmares, their forms shifting and glitching. I gripped my machete, ready for a fight. The first Guardian was a towering beast, its body made of corrupted code. It roared, the sound like 1,000 modems screeching. I ducked its swing, my machete slicing through its leg. It howled, its body flickering. I struck again, and it dissolved into pixels. The second Guardian was stealthier, its form melding with the shadows. It struck from the darkness, its claws raking my back. I spun, my machete cutting through its chest. It flickered, then solidified, its eyes burning with malice. I fought back, my body aching, my breath ragged, but I was no match for its speed. Suddenly, a shot rang out. The Guardian flickered, then dissolved. Alex stood behind me, his rifle smoking. "Need some help?" he asked, a grim smile on his face. I nodded, grateful for the backup. Together, we faced the final Guardian. It was a monstrosity, its body a writhing mass of code. It struck with the force of a thunderclap, its fists leaving craters in the walls. We fought back, our attacks barely scratching it. It was too strong, too fast. We were outmatched. But we weren't alone. Mia and Sarah joined us, their faces etched with determination. Mia hacked at the Guardian, her tablet a blur of code. Sarah chanted, her voice resonating with power. The Guardian flickered, its body convulsing. We struck as one, our weapons cutting through its form. It dissolved, its scream echoing in the chamber. Exhausted, we regrouped, our bodies battered and bruised. But we were alive. We had faced the Guardians, and won. The city groaned, the walls shifting again. A new tunnel opened, leading deeper into the darkness. We stepped inside, ready for whatever came next. The tunnel led us to the city's heart, a chamber filled with pulsating light. In the center stood a monolith, its surface covered in symbols. The air hummed with power, the city's digital pulse throbbing in our veins. This was it. The mainframe. The source of the city's power. Mia approached the monolith, her tablet connected to it via a cable. She was hacking the mainframe, her fingers dancing over the screen. The symbols on the monolith shifted, their patterns changing. The city groaned, the walls flickering like a dying screen. Suddenly, Mia cried out. Her body convulsed, her eyes rolling back. She was being attacked, her mind invaded by the city's defenses. I rushed to her side, my hand gripping hers. I could feel it, the digital assault, the city's wrath. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of code threatening to drown us, but I wasn't alone. Alex and Sarah joined us, their hands on ours. Together we fought back, our minds united against the city's onslaught. It was a battle of wills, a digital tug-of-war. The city fought with the fury of a cornered beast, its defenses lashing out like a whip. But we held firm, our resolve unbreakable. Slowly, the assault subsided. The city's defenses crumbled, its power waning. Mia regained control, her fingers flying over the tablet. The symbols on the monolith shifted again, their patterns stabilizing. The city groaned, the walls solidifying. We had done it. We had hacked the mainframe, but our victory was short-lived. The chamber trembled, the air filling with static. A figure materialized before us, its form made of pure code. It was the city's avatar, its digital consciousness. It spoke, its voice echoing in our minds. You have proven yourselves worthy, it said, but you must make a choice. Use my power for good or evil. The fate of the world depends on it. The avatar loomed over us, its eyes burning with intensity. The choice it offered was daunting, the weight of it, crushing. Use the city's power for good or evil. The fate of the world depended on it. But what did that mean? What was the right choice? We argued, our voices echoing in the chamber. Alex wanted to destroy the city, to eliminate the threat it posed. Mia saw potential, a way to use the city's power to advance technology, to change the world. Sarah was cautious, her eyes lingering on the symbols, the warnings etched into the walls. I was torn. The city was a digital nightmare, a place of horror and death. But it was also a marvel, a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. Could we harness its power for good? Or would we be corrupted, our intentions twisted by the city's dark influence? The avatar watched us, its form flickering with impatience. You must choose, it said, its voice resonating in our minds. The chamber trembled, the walls pulsating with light. The city was unstable, its power fluctuating. We were running out of time. Suddenly a realization struck me. The city was a digital anomaly, a place where reality glitched. It was a test, a challenge to our humanity. The choice wasn't about good or evil. It was about control, about who we were, and who we wanted to be. I turned to my friends, my voice steady. We can't control the city, I said. No one can. It's a force of nature, a digital storm. We need to let it go. We need to disconnect it from our world. They looked at me, their eyes reflecting understanding. We were in agreement. We turned to the avatar, our decision made. We choose neither, I said. We choose to set you free. The avatar stared at us, its form flickering with surprise. Then it nodded, its eyes softening. You have chosen wisely, it said. I will disconnect from your world. But remember, the digital and the physical are now interconnected. You cannot escape the storm forever. With that, it dissolved, its form breaking into pixels. The chamber trembled, the walls shifting. The city was collapsing, its digital structure disintegrating. We had to get out, fast. We ran, our hearts pounding, our breath ragged. The tunnels twisted and turned, the walls flickering like a dying screen. The city groaned, its voice echoing with finality. It was saying goodbye. We reached the surface, the jungle greeting us with a burst of heat and humidity. Behind us, the city crumbled, its stones turning to dust. The digital anomaly was gone, disconnected from our world, but the memory remained, a haunting reminder of the power we had encountered. Paolo was waiting for us, his eyes wide with relief. We didn't speak, our silence filled with shared understanding. We had survived the city, the digital nightmare, but we were changed. Our perceptions of reality altered. As we journeyed back to civilization, I couldn't shake off the Avatar's words. The digital and the physical were now interconnected. We couldn't escape the storm forever. The dark web was out there, its depths unexplored, its secrets waiting to be discovered. And I knew, with a thrill of anticipation and dread, that I would dive back in, seeking the next digital anomaly, the next lost city of the damned. For that is the curse of the explorer, the burden of the journalist. To seek, to find, to uncover the truth, no matter how dark, no matter how terrifying. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay out of the dark. Because the dark is where the monsters live. And I should know, I've seen them face to face. This is MM13 signing off. The fight continues. If you like today's tales, don't forget to like and subscribe MM13. Help MM13 get to 1,000 subscribers.